Mind, philosophy of mind. Dear friends, I promised my second blog to talk about crime. Its essence is that prisons should be abolished as buildings. Otherwise, we will never achieve significant reduction in crime. Prisons are nursery of criminality, peculiar schools of crime. But I happened to hear two famous bloggers discussing the topic of knowledge culture. Does a person need knowledge to become successful in life? So, in the second blog, I want to raise the topic of what is the mind, especially since the 16th chapter of my book, The Epoch of Modern Man, is called Mind. Each chapter of this book contains information that is new, and it seems to me that there are things that have not been discussed in the press or on internet before. Let me explain my understanding of mind, which will be quite different from conventional understandings and explanations. But it will open the way to a new explanation of our life and give new directions of research in many fields of science and life. The essence of this explanation is that 1. A mind is a physical phenomenon. 2. Mind is inherent in everything, including inanimate nature. Laws rule the world. There is a law of mind. I called it the basic law of dialectics, the law of development in which the mind is embedded. Let us quote this law of dialectic, the law of development. If separate parts of matter and energy, which are in constant motion, acquire the possibility of a more complex formation, then this process takes place with the acquisition of the formation's ability to certain self-protection against disintegration and influence harmful to this formation. Under the action of eternal forces, the formation is partially destroyed, which is necessary for the next stage of improvement, the end of the law. This is the law of improvement and the law of the victory of the more perfect. This is a physical law of the mind, not the mind that seems to have appeared since the creation of man, but the mind that has always existed. A mind that existed long before the appearance of man, even long before the appearance of living beings. Mind, like matter and energy, has existed forever. From this law, it follows that processes in the universe, including on earth, do not take place blindly, but according to the law of development in the direction of improvement. Such a simple law of the mind. Great things are very simple. For example, nature itself found a way to transmit genetic information using only 4 letters. These are adenine, thymine, cytosine, guanine. Currently, a gigantic mass of information The so-called digital informatics uses only two numbers, that is, two letters. Note that the spiritual substance of the mind is described by a physical law. That is, the mind is material. The human mind only seems original. In fact, people have only increased the number of trial threads in various directions of nature and the earth by millions and billions of times, and only those of them who acquire more perfect features are fixed in great and eternal paths of the mind. If we fully mastered this law, the earth would become even more attractive. There would be no swamps, no malaria. There would be no crime. There would be no wars that gave nothing to anyone. Millions of people gave their lives in wars. The use of waste would take place in a closed cycle. It would not accumulate it in the environment. The human mind is an accumulation of experience. If it is not enough, then as a result of our irresistible desire for will, for knowledge, we penetrate into various aspects of our life with the help of fantasy, such. There we gain experience to give the opportunity to pass it further. This is the way of the mind. That is, the mind is either an accumulation of its experience and experience of all humanity, or an attempt to search. No wonder they say that there is the tree of knowledge. The path of development of the mind resembles a tree. Individual skeletal branches depart from the trunk of cognition, then they give branching. Then it is again and again, so are many times. Some branches give various and numerous branching, some remain without continuation and gradually dry up. From above, all branches are covered with leaves. Leaves, figuratively speaking, are the fantasy that goes in different directions of the unknown, and only those leaves which find a real confirmation become the beginning of a new branching of the tree of knowledge. The rest falls to then would reappear again and again. There is a trunk in which the laws known to people were concentrated. The tree has its roots, which are rooted in the depths of history, culture, in the depths of the spiritual life of society and humanity. The tree takes juices from its base and catches the energy of the sun with its leaves, information in the form of novelty, which feeds the tree of knowledge and does not allow it to wither. The basis of the process of cognition is the assimilation of experience. Theoretical experience will then be stably fixing when it will be tasted by practice and periodically repeated. The task of the school consists in accumulation and transfer knowledge. Logic takes effect after accumulating experience. The essence of logic consists in comparison, in finding similar features and phenomena, in drawing general conclusions from the comparison. This is how laws are opened. But only with the appearance of fantasy does real knowledge begin. That is the main feature of man. Fantasy in an attempt to search. Fantasy is not only a need to break through the unknown, but also an attempt to give already known scenes and phenomena fantastic shapes, in the sense that they seem are explaining previously unknown things. This is how theories and teachings, including religious ones, begin. Some of them master the consciousness of the mass of people. They become the basis of a new way of life, a new culture. Some teachings are connecting with the history of nation for hundreds and thousands of years. Others show their inability after some time, and sometimes they cause great harm to their followers. Take communist teachings. First, from the dreams of a happy life for all people on a planet, came the teaching about the leading role man of manual labor in the historical process, and then about the dictatorship of a proletariat. It is the proletariat that had no property. Its leaders, having seized power, began to ignore economic laws, as well as the right that gave freedom to an individual. As a result, they came to reach mass terror. Hitler's teaching is based on the right of force, not reason, a doctrine based on blood, gene, and not spiritual kinship of people. The doctrine brought countless suffering to almost all people on the planet. An essential feature is that all harmful teachings and systems operate with the help of slogans of struggle for justice and a happy future, life for the majority. All this is necessary only for the previous spiritual enslavement of people. Insufficient development of intellect and mind is the main cause of spiritual enslavement. If a person is not sufficiently prepared, he is weak. Before coming of age, everyone must learn the basics of laws and their processes, the Declaration of Human Rights, the military statute, and understanding the rules of protection of their freedom. When a person voluntarily gives up part of his will to achieve certain goals, he should know the scope and price of this loss. In case of unpreparedness, you need to fence yourself off from psychological violence, shouting, whispering, threats, racketeering, and terror with a protective or imaginary wall, and persistently look for a way out of a difficult situation. Psychological violence and spiritual enslavement are possible only with promises and intimidation, which are beneficial those because it is the exist way to keep the largest number of people in subjection, often in the form of mass psychosis. After all, this psychosis has all the sign of mass hypnosis, which I described in the Psychology of Love section. Totalitarian systems, for the sake of happiness that will come one day, were exhausting and exterminating millions of people, and the people were in a state of euphoric psychosis. There was a belief on an idea, not a law. There were sacrifices for the sake of an idea, not a law. When the idea is disappeared, for which people held on, they get confused. That is why after the collapse of totalitarian formations, there is a state of decline, crisis, and apathy. It is best to oppose repressive terror, force resistance. A risky life in freedom is better than a life in fear and captivity, which, as history has shown, is also no less risky. That is why calls for justice need to be given special critical attention. Finally, force can be defeated only the power of mind. The power of mind is embedded in social laws. I will present 8 basics, in my opinion, social laws later in other blocks. One of them sounds like this: lend the mind. There cannot be a happy and long life for all, built on the misfortune on an individual or a group of people. It is necessary to respect the right of the minority. So says the power of mind. One of the 8 most basic social laws says, always respect every person. Earlier we mentioned the law that obliges a person to work. Mental activity is the culmination of our activity, work. That is, the mind is the highest component of our working capacity. Its spiritual part, mental activity, mind shorter, together with the physical process of work, give real material and spiritual values. Accumulating knowledge is similar to accumulating savings. The use of knowledge gives us additional values or the possibility of further transferring it to the next generation. The learning process is similar and is analogous to the process of accumulating, saving, and using them. The accumulating of knowledge as well as accumulating the savings is initially more related to the genetic craving of life, which obliges to give offspring, whereas the use of knowledge to pass it on and the use of saving for one's own needs is more characteristic of the second genetically determined stage of life, which we call the craving for aging, which will be covered in a separate section on separate views of Buddhism. The mind helps each of us create the conditions for a happy life in a similar area, in an increasingly limited living space. The winner will not be the one who will try to capture more and more space, but the one who will most intelligently use the limited territory and resources. Smart arrangement of the wealth, waste-free and reuse of resources will greatly increase the capabilities of the earth, will allow a happy existence on it much more people, 10, 100 times more, for thousands and thousands of years. Only mind and work will help to transform our earth into a beautiful world, the appearance of which even our fantasy does not help us to imagine. We are given only the right, limited by laws, of rational activities within frames great and eternal past the law of mind. If, God forbid, we deviate from this path, then the territories vacated by such a catastrophe will become the site of another intelligent evolution. You are told that there is no perfect life, that you are not and cannot be perfect. The human mind is one of the signs of approaching a perfect life. The mind allowed to provide materially for a person in increasingly difficult conditions allowed him to free himself from negative circumstances, developed spirituality. Only free creatures can improve and develop in such a way that they can do without outside help. There cannot be sufficient development in captivity. Let no one think that he already knows everything and he does not need to study further. Everyone in his life will face his own problems, the way of solve which he will not know. If problems would have arisen, I think he will need this book, The Epoch of Modern Man. After reading once, twice, separate section, you can find that ladder on which necessary to get out. Thanks for listening to my short blog about the material mind having its own physical law.